Hello and welcome into the SorareData NBA Strategy Show. I am Andrew Laird. You can find me as Lairdinho on Sorare. Joined once again by Alex Hooper, TiltCityFC, and Gator Guy 231, Keith Jamison, who now I'm just pointing everywhere. There we go.
We can't sync that well ever again, though, Laird.
Never again. Yeah, that's a
Never.
pure fluke. If anybody saw the finger pointing, yeah, it's not happening again. But gentlemen, we have a very important topic to talk about, and I'm going to direct this rather accusatory question directly at Alex.
Ooh.
Alex, why on earth do the three of us each own an Austin Rivers rare card? What happened yesterday that somehow ended up in every single one of our galleries?
I think what happened was I couldn't get a Kai Jones rare, and then I saw Austin Rivers like, 28 minutes, even knowing he's like a quarter point a minute player. And hey, look, I didn't recommend it, I don't think. I don't remember if I recommended it, but I think we all knew what we were getting ourselves into.
Yeah. I think the best part was like right before you said Rivers, it was, Jalen Noel's popping.
Right.
And I was like, oh, why would I get the backup with the high usage when I could get the starter that sits in the corner?
Yeah, for half the L10.
Yeah.
Right.
But he did outscore Cat.
Yeah, we just got to take a bat to people's knees, and then Austin Rivers looks relatively okay.
Right.
I didn't know that Cat got that hurt. My bad.
He got very, very hurt. And
oh, man, I feel bad.
In fairness, he probably was going to outscore him anyway. But yeah, I think it was very strange yesterday because we kind of talk about how important it is to be active, meaning like stuck to a computer, which is probably the opposite of actually active. But, like in front of your computer near deadlines, because we have like situations where, guys are ruled out and somebody else steps up. And I was actually talking about this with somebody else earlier today that like, that's where the NBA knowledge edge is the greatest. How quickly you can be like, okay, this guy's out, so I'll play this guy. Or this one's out, so I'll go get this guy. And it's not always just the lineup replacement. Like so-and-so starting, like, yeah, he'll get more minutes, but like this guy is really the one who's going to benefit the most. And it just felt like we had like one after another last night. And we even talked about it last week that like sometimes you have one earlier in the day and you're like, oh, that's the cheat code this week. And then one comes up later and then the first cheat code is nothing. But yesterday kind of felt like they were all playable. And you were like, oh, I can actually, maybe I'll take two or three of them. And I'll just like, there was no one that was better than everyone else, particularly Austin Rivers. And so it just felt like I looked at my gallery this morning and I was like, what happened yesterday?
and you made all the wrong decisions. But you know what I was thinking about it last night was crazy about last game week. We'll call it last, or the current game week, was nothing really happened in the lead up to the day. Oh boy, we've got a visitor already. But we it was all really, really, really late. Really late news. It was all like 6:15 and 6:30. So like I'm doing my DFS stuff, like we always send out at 6:30. And it's just like, holy crap, it all happened in 5 minutes. So like everything's changing. And then you're like, oh crap, so rare. Part's happening too in 20 minutes. I don't even know. I didn't even get the chance to like look at a lot of the values and how they were popping. But I mean, you got the dreaded, or not the dreaded. I guess it's the opposite of dread. Charlotte players available tweet at like 6:20. And then at 6:35, it was New Orleans Pelicans players available.
Yeah.
Because they sat a ton of people. And that just immediately like just opens up the slate. I wanted to make a comment to you guys because I was like thinking about why I'm losing. With what I think is I need some good players. Like I have Luka, I have Giannis, I have Embiid. I have really good players overall. I think this really is becoming more and more of a value game. Like that, if you missed the value, so like the last two game weeks, I feel like you were really up against it if you didn't have Shake Milton, because he was dropping 50s and 60s on like an 8 L10. And now that rose up, Embiid's back, so like the shake cheat code, so to speak, might be go away. But I really do think that when we have those type of values, they almost become mandatory to have in your lineup. Like when you do the build like I had was like the Clippers guys I mentioned on the last show. But I had like the Reggie Jackson, Norm Powell, who surpassed their L10s, but not by enough. What are y'all's thoughts on that take?
I think it's incorrect that we're like, you can't win without this guy. I think it's correct to be like, I'm not winning a tier 1. But I think I just see like way too many comments of like, you can't win without this guy. And you're like, oh, well, there are 800 rewards and 300 of this guy's card in this contest. So like, obviously you can still win. I think the tricky thing now is figuring out the right balance between value. And this is kind of always the case in DFS too, but like, value isn't that helpful if you don't get enough points. Right. Like 15 points on an L5 is not as good as 45 points on an L15. You know, like so like you need the points too. And so
but it's like the second part of that though is most important, right? Because if the L5 for 15 unlocks the L45 that drops 90, then I'm okay. But
yeah,
if it doesn't, if it only unlocks the L45 that drops 40, now I'm struggling.
Sure. And so that's another reason why I feel like you can go with this, like if you don't have Shake, like you're dead, because like last week it was like, oh, I have Shake, so it allowed me to play Tatum, and like Tatum wasn't that good.
Right. And so that's when you die. That's when you die. Well, I guess Shake actually. I guess to me, it's just like we've talked about it, and I want to direct this at Alex too. It's like we've talked about that maybe that mid-tier, like DeRozan type, you know, let's just go Tyler Hero, probably is in the middle. And I'm trying to see if anybody's up on the screen.
Donovan Mitchell feels like
Trey Jones maybe is even in there. Mitchell's probably too high, but like in that like low 30s that you kind of see them.
Yeah, Buddy like Hield was the guy like this in that area, and he put up a 20 last night. So
do you think that like those type of builds also run you the biggest risk of, yes, you can go high, but you can also just flat out get out of the rewards too? Because that's what I'm finding. I've run it like 2 straight weeks, and I've run out of rewards even though they've surpassed their L10s.
I don't know. I've been running really good, and so I don't know. It's hard for me. It seems like every time I play a DeRozan, DeAndre Ayton, they're popping every single time I'm playing them.
Okay.
And I haven't been paying attention to my lineups that are losing necessarily to see what's going wrong there. I've only been looking at what's working with the winning, which is probably the wrong way to do it, because like DeRozan's not going to drop a 54 every time.
Right.
Yeah, it is the boom bust, but I think if you get the value at the bottom right, then it makes up for it. I don't know. I think you just have to get 3 players right to get in the rewards, and I don't know if it matters who it is, but it probably does. So just at the bottom end, what I do when looking for values, like, you know, we were talking about last night, Kai Jones, the guy that I was really fixated on, he put up a 17 or 18 on an L10 of 5. And it was like, all right, cool, 3x, but what is 3x in this case? Generally what I do when I'm looking for those guys is I like only look at players who project with an upside of like 30 points or more, or something around there, just because it's raw points, I think, matter way more when you suppress the amount of players that you're playing, and especially without positional confinements like with DFS. Right. Like if you can just find the one small forward in DFS who's going to 2x, 3x, 4x, as opposed to here it's like just find the guys. So I'm way more concerned with raw points, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm more looking for raw points added at the bottom than the X's. And it just depends so much on the player. It just depends so much. I don't know. It's hard to answer sometimes. I struggle to answer some of these questions because I do like the guys who suppress their L10s, but like you kind of mentioned, if they do the L10 suppressing thing, like if Buddy Hield puts up a 20 on a 30, then all of a sudden, like, the rest of your values just matter so much less. It's hard to pinpoint which level is more important, for me at least at this point.
I'm going to follow up on that, but before I forget this joke that I was going to make before, Keith, Alex has been running so hot that he was like, I need to figure out if I can win with Austin Rivers. Like, I think that's what it was.
So I think the secret for Alex to keep running hot is for us to not tail him.
Maybe. So anyway, what I think, like, this current game week, what are we on? 12, 13? 12.
Yeah.
That, like, there was a lot of good value, but like they were all kind of playable.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even remember who I put on the thumbnail for this. I guess I could just go to my gallery and see which sorry players I just recently bought.
Nikhil Alexander-Walker, my boy.
Yeah.
Rivers,
So like, so that
Jones.
was one that, like, if Markkinen was out, he was better, but like
Mm-hmm.
Markkinen was in and it was like, oh, okay. So he's now Romeo Langford. We haven't seen yet. Surely he's got a triple double in him. Jalen Noel. And
I do think Langford's the best one. I'm a little bit.
It's going to be hard to beat Noel right now.
Yeah,
that's true.
If he's the best one, I will happily take that.
Sub 10.
But like, looking at these guys, like, yes, you could like one more than the other, but they were fairly close L10 wise, that like playing one probably didn't change the rest of your lineup. Like, Langford was like an 8, right? Noel was 11. Like, it sounds like they're close. And so you're not like drastically changing lineups. Like, oh, if I just play Rivers instead of Langford, then I can do, I can get Doncic instead of Trae Young. Like, it's not that big of a gap. So then I feel like, and the range of outcomes of these guys is all fairly close, like, realistically.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're all kind of okay. And like, what do you do? What I did was I got all of them and I played all of them. And I think that was wrong. And
was it though? Or is that results?
I think Rivers. I think Rivers was just a straight up bad play.
I would probably agree, but I also feel like I'm being very results driven on that. Like, if he gets like 2 or 3 steals and he gets like 20, are we thinking he's a bad play?
That's fair. I'm buying
Sorare first pitch subscriptions for all my friends if he smashes tonight.
Yeah, no
or
kidding.
whatever the next game is.
I think the reason it was bad is he played 28 minutes, and yes, it was against the Warriors. Yes, it was in a blowout. He played 28 minutes the game before and put up literally like 7.9.
For sure.
So I think that's where, it was a situation where I looked at it and I was like,
oh, we bought them both.
I don't know if any of y'all watch Arrested Development, but there's the meme. He says, it hasn't worked for anyone before, but it might work for us. And that was kind of what it was with Rivers, where like, yeah, he played 28 minutes. He just had a bad game. He won't have a bad game this time. And then he did what he does, and he's not good.
Do you slap him right into a lineup if you know that he's playing 24 minutes last night on an L10 of 5?
That's what I did. I mean, I just kind of, everything was indicating that was the case, and I popped him in. I mean, it wasn't necessarily a matter of, all right, I'm just playing him because he's on an L10 of 5. He did make my lineups better.
Right.
I only played him in one spot, and that was my rare contender spot. I bought his rare for somehow more than you guys did, and I got to him early. But that lineup was bad anyway. But I did play Noel in rare champion, and that team has an L10 of 110. Like, it wasn't Noel was one guy who was like, I'll plug him in anywhere. It doesn't matter because he's projecting for 40, which is about what he scored. Rivers, I at least was a little judicious with, but he's not even the guy I wanted. The guy I wanted was Kai Jones, and it was that 17, and that actually would have been, double what Rivers gave us and would have been a lot better. But he's just he's bad points per minute. And that's what I should have looked at instead of like, he's going to project well on good minutes, but generally when that happens, like if you're projecting a guy for a double minutes boost, then generally they get an increase in usage because they're filling someone else's usage as well. But Rivers, we already knew, doesn't get a boost in usage with a boost in minutes. He's just out there. He is a warm body, and that's all he's really ever been. And I hope he doesn't hunt me down, but should have known.
You're not the first one. You're not the first one to toss shade at Austin Rivers, but
like what's also awful is that not that he plays the same position as Karl Anthony Towns, but that's one player no longer on the court because of this injury who's like has a ton of touches on the ball, and like now that's not there. Theoretically, whoever comes in for Towns is not going to be Towns, and so it's like, oh, everyone can get more. And
I think the problem
didn't get that memo.
I think the problem. I still feel bad about the cat comment. I'll just make I forgot he got injured, but he had 1.7 at half before the injury. So that's where I was going off of for cat. But so my DFS partner coined this term that every single time I accidentally play one of the guys, I think about it, but he calls them corner sitters, essentially the guys that get on the court and they just get dispatched into the corner and they're just going to stand there, so to speak. And they're just sitting there to wait. And like Alex said, they're either just there to play defense or they're there just because they're a warm body. And we always, in DFS, for years and upon years, when we get a value, like Rivers, so this is kind of maybe tying us back to the whole value conversation. The first thing that we try to evaluate from the DFS aspect is, does this guy going to command any usage? And if not, is there somebody on the bench that's going to be coming in that is going to become a usage hog? On this one, I feel so stupid because it was obvious that Noel was going to command a ton of usage. Noel commands a ton of usage off the bench when Minnesota's healthy. Now, all of a sudden, you take more guys off the court, and he's just going to go, oh, this is my time. I joke, Nickeil Alexander-Walker's like that. My favorite all-time example, Hoop's going to laugh, Jordan Clarkson is the greatest example ever of somebody when they got on the court. He's just like, this is my time, guys. You don't realize this, but I'm about to make it rain. I call it irrational confidence, guys, but you want the irrational confidence, guys. Rivers actually used to be somewhat of an irrational confidence guy. I think that's maybe where we somewhat are shaded because, people don't realize about this Rivers. Rivers was the top recruit out of high school during his class. He was the 10th pick by the Pelicans, went to Duke, all the things, and he's just slowly become just a guy that exists in the corner. So I guess all of that just means maybe the best thing that we can do with value is make an evaluation. Here's another one to look up that I have way too many in my gallery. I was buying it for a flip, but type in Rodney McGruder. Laird. Why are you laughing?
Because you sent me the underdog tweet when he was starting, and then there was the 6 purchases in a row that you made, and I was like, "All right, man,
that was a terrible buy. I got rid of one of them. It's a terrible buy. Look, those are 2 starts, right? The 20. I thought I should have been able to get off of all of them. You would think, but he was another guy that even when he came up, I bought them because he was like $7 for a rare, right? It's like, come on, it's about to start. $7, come get it. But these low usage guys that are out there to serve a purpose of being a body, not to affect the game, the offensive game. I think those are the values that we need to evaluate as they come out and try to stay away from them.
So really quick, just kind of to the point about like gaining usage and all of that when you gain minutes. So to calculate my upside projections, I use an upside per 100 possessions, and it's very heavily tied to shot volume and usage percentage itself. So with more minutes, yada, yada, they get more upside. Jaden Knoll is a 68 point per 100 possession player. Who is the other guy that we were talking about in that range? Kai Jones is 67. So like those are good buys when they're about to step into a big role. Langford is a 24. So all of a sudden you're at, a third of that.
A third.
Austin Rivers was 14.
Yeah, both are corner sitters.
Yeah. So but I think Langford actually gets points for defense. I might be wrong. I might just be.
Rivers used to take a steal or two.
I think I had some long-term bias towards River because I remember him being a chucker and he's just not. And I think I know what I'm going to look at now when I'm looking at these guys who all of a sudden on my projections are like, oh, he's got a 5L10, but he's projecting for this many. If I just look at their points per 100 and find the guy who's actually getting a usage boost, then that's probably the way to go. So we're learning as we go. Thank you, Austin Rivers, for teaching me a tough lesson.
Yeah, I don't know how to avoid those guys other than just knowing who those guys are.
Here's a question for you, Alex. Where do you guys get the data on points per 100 possessions? Isn't that just like Basketball Reference?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's Basketball Reference.
Yeah, and just transpose them into.
There's tons of free basketball data out there.
So all I use is free data, and then I just put my own spin on it.
Yep.
Easy enough.
So Laird, you're not going to. Should we come back to Kuminga and all this?
What about him?
How he's not any of the things that we're talking about, and why that's the big difference in the value.
Well, hold on 1 second here.
Whoa, no.
He's a 30 upside per 100. So better than Langford.
Better than. I mean, I guess the problem with your Kuminga numbers is because is that skewed when he doesn't get the crazy boost games because he has like a small role as like a fifth cog.
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah, he's just like a tough one to like when he plays. It's just so different than their normal rotation. Like you almost have to figure out how to just split them out completely.
Right. You need like lineup on off numbers and need to figure that into their per 100 possessions.
Right. Like you could just look at his chart here and be like, okay, when did Clay sit? And when did Clay, Steph, and Draymond sit? And you're like, okay, wherever the green dots are, that's when they sat. Because like he's not doing it. He's absolutely not getting remotely close to these scores without those guys being out.
See, I think what I was just thinking of to go back to to try to keep going this value conversation, not I'm bummed last night that I had already gotten Rivers, so to speak, before all of the values came out because all right, so for Charlotte, they sat everybody, and it was also apparent that they were going to get absolutely destroyed playing the best team in the NBA away. And I think they were down by 45 at some point. So James Book, thank you. You already knew where I was going. So a guy like James Bouknight was going to get usage. The starter was Theo Maledon, who's actually had some massive games for Oklahoma City in past years. Mm-hmm. What did he end up doing? 27.8.
Yeah.
I think Jaden McDaniels, I saw some people, or that's Jay Lynn, I believe, was somebody. The bench, there's Kai Jones. Who is the other guy I'm trying to think of? Go scroll down one more, a little bit more later. Okay, I don't know who McDaniels is. I remember seeing him pop up. I've never heard of him. But then even in New Orleans, you had some guy that I've just started hearing, like Daniels was off the bench playing like 20-something minutes. You know, you had Devontae Graham. Like, you had like all these other usage spots, and somehow, because we bought it before all the news happened, we all were like, oh, Austin Rivers. Oh, he's starting. I think that's like my biggest Trey Murphy the third showing up.
3M3, man. I knew it, like the big game was guaranteed when I didn't have him in a lineup. Although it's not like he did this on like an L10 of 12. Like I wouldn't put him in the values of the other guys. Although he was the most realistic to go to 30.
So I guess where I'm going on all of this is, and we've talked about a little bit, but yes, we want L10s that are low so we can jam in the studs, but we want the good low L10s that actually can do something. And it's not like just like this fluke that they got 3 shots in the game. They happened to hit all 3, and they got 2 steals, and they didn't get a turnover. like those are the things we need to watch for. Like PJ Tucker is another good example of somebody that not touch until the playoffs. Like PJ Tucker only shows up in the playoffs. The rest of the time, he just kind of corner sits and plays defense. Like, we just got to watch out for those guys. I think it's my biggest thought on the value. And so the answer being yes, there is too much value.
But like if you knew all of the values ahead of time for like in this game week,
okay,
not the results, but if you knew, you know,
if they all came out at 4 o'clock and I got to choose everything, is what you're saying.
Yeah. What do you do differently? Like, do you actually do anything differently?
So I will just say this. I did not consider Austin Rivers in the least bit on DFS. So I think immediately the fact that he wasn't even in my player pool or thought process at all, and then somehow finds in my Sorare lineup is a complete and utter process mistake. Not Hoop's fault, not Laird's fault. Like,
no, that's fair.
And, you know, like, there was a lead up. We could have sold into it and probably made some money off of it too. So there was opportunity. So I think not that everybody's going to play DFS. Not that everybody's going to play DFS whatsoever. But if it's like not a guy that you can project for upside, I think that you just got to get off of them. And that's just not somebody's really smart and already palled it.
I paid more than you, Alex. Don't worry.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't think you did. I thought I saw a number that was a little less.
But yeah,
I beat me by 94 cents.
It should just be an upside calculation with these guys. I think that's the answer. Is if they don't have upside, then they're not going to improve your lineup. Because you're the guy that you're going to get them for, like the guy that they're going to open up, is already going to be pressed to really crush his L10 too. Because you're probably opening up to get, let's use my type of lineup, for instance. Like, I have my 2 in champion that I'm always going to play is Luka and Giannis. Just boop, boop, and then figure it out from there. And, you know, Austin Rivers, if I played around with it, I ended up being able to use an OG Anunoby, who's on the 38. He's always going to be pressed on a 38 to really, really crush it. Like, his upside on a 38 might be like 48. So I'm going to gain 10 on my L10 for that. And now what am I realistically expecting from Rivers? 15, I probably would have been okay with. So I advanced 20. And we know that number is not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah.
When you're using up 53 of your L10. So I guess that's, to answer your question, Laird, that's where I would be at. It's like, it's not only what that L5, but like, let's say that instead of OG, I think Jokic is a super low L10 this week. I think he's like a 42 or 43.
Yeah, feels
but let's say that I had a Jokic rare, right? And now Rivers can open up Jokic. That's different math. Because we know Jokic is one of those guys that can put up 70 to 80.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the different math. He opens up OG. That's probably not a good trade-off. But he opens up Jokic, or he opens up Giannis, or one of those, then maybe it's worth taking that plunge. Opens up AD, right? Opens up anybody on your page of these top guys, that probably works out.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't play him with any of these guys.
Oh, I think that's kind of my point of where our mistake was, right?
I think
we
the
just
mistake
didn't
was
we didn't put them the right people. But so, Laird, is it a mistake though? Let's just say that he opened up a Jokic for you. Would that have been a mistake? Reggie Jackson and Norm Powell versus Jokic and Austin Rivers.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. So I think
it was a mistake.
But back to the question, Alex. You can do the Powell and Reggie Jackson or Jokic and Austin Rivers.
So, I mean, I'm trying it. We talked about this. Like, I because of Rivers, I got to play Curry in Contender.
Right, which was
like
a nice
Curry's
differential.
I bet I'm like, I don't want to say I'm the only one, but I bet not many people are stupid enough to play him.
I think the difference. So like Jokic could pop for an 80 and maybe more realistically a 65. And Rivers' best case is a 20. All right, you're sitting at 85. I don't think it's that hard for Powell and Reggie Jackson and those lineups to hit that number either.
My previous relationship with Reggie Powell or Reggie Jackson and Norm Powell is it's very difficult for them.
In their current setting, like didn't Powell just hit like a 45, something like that?
No, like that was before I bought him. I have wrecked him since. He got like a 36, and I mean they both have the upside there. It's just the problem is their median games are just so meh. The median games just become really close to their L10s.
Yeah, it's just a really low volatility on these guys.
Right.
Zero
we actually
peripheral.
want the big volatility, right? Like that's the whole thing. We actually want the guy that goes off for, I think we talked about that before, that drops 60 or he drops 10. Jordan Clarkson, circa Cavaliers and Lakers. That's who we want.
Well, apparently they're all dropping 60s when Alex plays them, so.
I know. We just got to the moral of this too much value. If Hoop doesn't think so, then we're fine. But no, we just got to tag Hoop. I don't know. I think it's really difficult. Like this is where I'm really struggling with this game, and I think it gives it long-lasting fun, right? Because you're constantly trying to solve puzzles. But I do think that it's like a really really interesting game because in football, right? So we're football, it's a star game. You've got the stars, and you just need to line them up and go. Like you're not trying to solve a puzzle piece. You're not going to have to try to figure out. Oh, this random center back is starting for Qatar today. And he's going to allow me to play Kimmich. I need to go get him, right? But that's the puzzle that we're given in NBA and why the game's just so different. Because it's like you sometimes have to make a sacrifice. You have to like play an Austin Rivers to jam in that next guy. And I don't know if we know the answer if it's still right or wrong.
The reason I'm just dead set on Rivers was the wrong guy is because I don't think his upside is as real as it looks on paper. I think that's.
I agree with that.
I think that's just what it was, and that's why Kai Jones, when he's on the floor, produces. He's a double threat. He gets blocks. Austin Rivers stands in the corner, and there were two options there, and Rivers was just the wrong one. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I just if Rivers though, and I want Laird to answer this too. If Rivers ended up putting up like 18, is he wrong? Like take process out. If you got the result of 18 from an L5 and let you happen, like I don't think we're having a conversation.
No, because I don't think we're having the conversation because an outlier happened and the process was still wrong, though. I think that's the thing. That's why I'm like, if you're going to do it, I think you have to do it. There's every week, there are guys in my spreadsheet with an L10 of 5 and they get a slight minutes boost. And all of a sudden it's like, all right, this guy can score 20 this week. And my experience with the numbers is that they lie, and you need certain amounts of context, which is why I think what you and I do is it works, because I look at the numbers, I'm like, I like this guy, and you look at the facts and you're like, I like this guy. And when that aligns, it works. And I think, if we put our heads together and had to choose between Kai Jones and Austin Rivers, the correct process is to go with the guy who actually can score in those minutes. And that's why I think, like, result wise, yeah, I'm feeling a little better, but this is the point where I'm finally looking at the guy who let me down and being like, what did I do wrong? And I think that's fine. And I'm okay with settling on the fact that the process was probably just wrong there.
I played Kai Jones in DFS lineup, so maybe that just says what you need to know there.
Well, it is because on lock days, I actually go and I watch the DFS shows, because they are more beholden to the news that's coming as it's happening. And I'm reacting to numbers in a spreadsheet that don't always update as quickly as I'd like. And by lock, I was really upset that I didn't have Teo Maladon, and he didn't pop, but he did better than some of the guys that I played. I was completely okay with Jalen Noel everywhere I played him. Like, that never wavered, because, and I mean, did he pop for DFS? Like, you came in and you immediately said you liked him when I mentioned him. I think you might be muted.
Yeah, we were all over Maladon. We were all over Noel. Like, all these guys, to your point, like, you're refuting my own point. Yeah, I think it was a mistake, considering that I wouldn't even touch Rivers with the 10-foot pole on DFS money that I can lose that night, and all those other guys are guys that are in our player pool and our core plays, that type of thing. Yeah, I mean, okay, it was a mistake. Fine, Alex. Fine,
And,
you happy?
Well, yes. But L10s and DFS prices mirror each other somewhat, right? Like, they're all still
Time to
based on-
time.
Yeah.
Noel was cheap as hell. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, Noel's the play. Let's be real.
I think
He's double the
we're
L10.
yeah, I think what we're kind of ignoring in that, though, is that I think if we are doing this show after Austin Rivers drops 20 fantasy points last night, I think we're sitting here like, man, that's like, he literally delivered like a 99th percentile outcome, and we got lucky. Like, I don't think we're like, yeah, that's what we expected. Like, we knew he'd have more minutes, but like, I think we didn't put enough. I don't think we really thought about what the realistic outcome was. And I'm not saying like what happened was the realistic outcome, like what we would have thought it was yesterday, but I think we overshot what we thought it might be, just because it was like, oh, like if his L10 was 11, I don't think we even remotely think about him.
Right. Absolutely. And
11 is still low.
And I think that's kind of why, when I keep talking about Rivers, I'm talking about he and Kai Jones, whereas when I talk about Noel, like, he's double their L10. Rivers, and the fact that Rivers and Jones underperformed what I expected them to do, and they had the same L10, and Jones 3X, like, if I think of it in that context, like, yeah, there is a clear and obvious answer there. I think Jones could have had 20 to 25, and he had 17, and I was disappointed. And Austin Rivers put up an 8, and I was like, I should have seen that coming. That's kind of, and like, that is a simple demonstration of like the process. I can't just say, well, yeah, Jalen Noel played so much better than Austin Rivers because he was more than double his L10. I think I guess my point through all of this is just like, if I'm bracketing, if there's too much depth, as one might ask, if you bracket it at specific small ranges of L10, like 5 to 8, 8 to 11, and you just ask yourself, like, who has a realistic upside here? That's where you go. And for me, I just ended up on Austin Rivers because I got cheap on a Kai Jones auction and got outbid by, like 0.005. And then I just wound up buying an Austin Rivers.
It's one of my favorite things that's so rare, when you're like, I'm willing to pay $15 for this, and someone's like, will you pay $15.60? And you're like, hell no.
Yeah. Hold on. What was yours, Laird, last night? What was the offer you got? You listed somebody for what, and then got a DM. They'll pay you.
No, it was for Rivers. I offered to pay somebody 20. What did I end up paying for this card? Oh, I don't even want to look. I offered 0.022, and they asked for 0.0227, which ended up being like $1.58 difference, if even that much.
Should draw on a hard line in the sand and be like, no, I know how much he stinks. I'm not paying an extra buck with it.
No, I did the opposite. I was like, hell yeah, I'll pay that extra $1. Why not? No, so here's a different question on this. And I think I know exactly what you'll say, but I want you to think of the opposite response and why that might be the answer. When there's too much value like this, might it be the best to ignore all of it and not try to jam in Austin Rivers so you can get an extra whoever in, Ja Morant, and just play the guys who have higher L10s and more realistic projections that will get you enough fantasy points? I'd like to go back to the Norman Powell, but just better examples.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's kind of what I've done the last few weeks. Obviously I've had the wrong players. Like before Norman Powell and Reggie Jackson, it was like Jaden Ivey without Cade Cunningham, and I'm trying to think of who else was in my gallery for a bit.
So I think that's a little bit of a different situation, because in those situations you were buying good basketball players, and now you're buying bad. No. But like, I think we're the further down the depth chart you get, like obviously just the uglier it gets. Like those guys were like next man up, and last night it was like third and fourth guys up, and like. So
I think the answer to your question, I mean, and maybe it's literally my jadedness over that mid tier is just a results thing, that it just didn't flip that week. And if I would have gotten the explosion games, I would be sitting here and going, this is the only way to play this game.
Right.
Because on the DFS, I'm sorry that I always go to DFS, but I really do feel like Sorare NBA is a very much a DFS game. It is a daily thing, because the fact of the matter is it changes. The Sorare NBA slate at 5 o'clock Eastern was very different than the Sorare NBA slate at 6:45. To me, that rings a DFS type of game, because news changes things so much. But in DFS, with those those next man up, all DFS is a next man up game. Like the slates where there is no news and everybody is in are the worst, because you're just having to evaluate, all right, here's who I think might pop off just because of a slight matchup inefficiency.
Yeah.
Like just because, okay, this game is paced up a little bit, so there's pace adjustments that get made. So I think the Booker versus, God, I don't even know who's playing fast right now. Brooklyn, I think, is the worst defensive team in the league. Booker versus Brooklyn with nobody to defend him. I'm going to pace up and give him an extra couple points. But what the best builds and the most fun way to play like DFS basketball and Sorare basketball is, okay, Kevin Durant is out tonight. Kyrie Irving's going to get a bump up. So Kyrie now might be underpriced because he was priced, or his L10 was based on playing with Durant and having to share the ball with Durant. And now there is no Durant. So how much more points can we give Kyrie? And then to your point, what's the second and third down trickle effect, right? Am I giving Royce O'Neal usage? Am I giving Cam Thomas off the bench? Am I giving – is Ben Simmons going to shoot the ball? Probably not. But I hope that point all made sense. So I guess to me, like my Clippers guys, maybe it wasn't a bad process. It was just bad results. But now all of a sudden I just sit to myself because they didn't hit. I go, oh, you're bad. Your process was bad. And I think that's just like the overreaction that we're going to always have with these games.
I do think that's one of the things that a lot of people not like misunderstand, but they don't think the extra second that like, oh, if Durant is out, I should go get Kyrie. Not let me go get Cam Thomas, whoever's starting for Durant. Like, let me go get that guy because he's got an L10 of 12 and he could score 25 tonight. But like Kyrie could put up a 70 now. because Durant
Right.
is out. And like, so like we've gotten a bunch of requests for stuff like that. Like depth charts are like, if this guy's out, who do we go get? And it's like, it's not that simple, or like who benefits
It's not
the
one
most.
for one.
Like you can look at on-off stats and all this stuff, but like, it doesn't always like tell the story, particularly because like sometimes there just isn't enough history about it. Like Durant always plays. And like
Right.
when he has been at least. And it's like, so when he sits, like we don't really know, but like it makes sense that Kyrie would just take 45 shots or whatever, you know?
So you know what's funny? That Kyrie KD example is actually really good, not for the KD side, but for the Kyrie side. So Alex, you probably remember, who were the number one pops right away for middle fingers when Kyrie first got suspended? Do you remember who the first two? Laird, you can go to it as well.
Patty Mills.
And
Harris?
that's correct. One more.
Not Cam Thomas.
Not Cam Thomas. Sumner.
Sumner,
It was
right.
Edward Sumner.
Oh, Sumner, right.
Those were the first two middle fingers. And for once, I actually got one right. And I bought up the Cam Thomases because I thought he wasn't going to start, but he would get the usage off the bench. And what we ended up seeing was Sumner and Mills. And Johnny 7 had it. But Sumner was fine. He wasn't like bad. Mills was bad. But Sumner didn't give you like big upside. He didn't give you Rivers downside, but he didn't give you big upside. While Patty Mills was the established name that people thought would happen, and nothing ended up going. The correct answer was Cam Thomas, right? So I think to your point is when we do get the values, there's a great example. Minnesota was too, right? Austin Rivers started, but it wasn't Austin Rivers getting the usage bump. It was Jalen Mills. So maybe it's that whole next level thinking.
Patty Mills feels like an Austin Rivers, like we should have known better. Like this should have never happened. This spike.
No. And I mean, it never will happen again. And when Kyrie does have his hiatus, which will come at some point.
Maybe that's the list we need to make. Just the never guys.
The never. Here's
the Austin Rivers All-Stars.
Oh my God. PJ Tucker, Austin Rivers. I'm sure we can find some more. Just label it the corner sitter club. No, Johnny. Kitty's not out.
Kitty is not out. No,
we're just speculating.
If
I'm just using an example.
Yeah.
First one that came to mind. But I mean, here's another one that we ended up seeing, right? If we want to go ahead, is Phoenix Suns. Chris Paul is out. Obviously, everybody knows campaign right away.
Yeah.
But we saw some cool usages off the bench, like Damian Lee. Or I guess Damian Lee was
more for Johnson, right?
Yeah. But, there's all sorts of usage that kind of comes up, to your point. It's not just one for one. Just because campaign is the one that was the immediate bump. Yes, he was the most important, but there were still some other bumps to happen. DeAndre Ayton got more usage. Booker got more usage. Onward.
Yeah. The Payne one was frustrating for me because like I own Chris Paul. I had Paul and Booker. And when Paul went down, it was like, oh, it's only going to be for like a game or two, so I'm not going to go buy Payne and just have him like sit in my gallery forever. And then it's been about 12 games now.
Yeah. So here's a good question for you and who. Should you be handcuffing those type of players?
No, get out of here.
No, why would we do that? It's like why would you buy a backup goalie for your goalie? Why would you do that?
Yeah, I'm good.
Just sit on Tyler Miller for 2 years. He's free out there.
He's free. Just 1 year. Just one.
It was just one.
No, not even a full year. He started at the beginning of this year.
Man, that just shows how long Sorare time is because I feel like you've had that card for like 7 years.
Yeah,
I feel like we've known each other for.
I have had it for 7 years, but.
Hoop, would you ever handcuff? Would you handcuff Ja Morant? Ja Morant's back at TiltCityFC. Let's go. Should you buy a Tyus Jones?
I don't know that there's a point. Like, if it's football, yeah, you lose your keeper. Having the backup keeper, you just slot him in. Here, it just changes your lineup so much. Like, so just having a guy and waiting for the guy in front of them to get hurt to just plug them in. Like, then I got to go buy 4 more guys if I want to really optimize my lineup. I don't really know that there's a point to it.
I think I agree, but I also actually see like the other side of things, like what we talked last week about Sorare Monkey buying up all these guys that could pop. I think that was who did it, and getting their XP up. But rather than just that, maybe there's some tactical nature to it, right? Like I've got a Jokic, DeAndre Jordan doesn't play a lot when Jokic is there, but he's half decent when Jokic is out.
Yeah, I think in that situation, you're given that resources are limited, like everyone's resources are limited except for a few galleries that we've seen.
Right.
But like you're basically taking yourself out of being able to pick up somebody who has this big jump in availability, in viability on another team, just because you don't like. I don't have Jokic, but if I bought Damian Lee here, like now I don't have resources to buy DeAndre Jordan if something happens to Jokic. So I'm just like waiting for something to happen to the Suns.
Well, that's, I think, was the point of why I don't think any of us were the hugest fan of just buying a ton of those type of players, is because it's a resource game. But I think that, like, I just randomly came up with the handcuff, and I was like, that's actually an interesting thought.
I think it makes sense if you can buy every card.
Right. Yeah. I think if there's an opportunity to own every card on the platform, then sure. But I don't know that allocating resources early to just sit on guys is as important as, like, say, if I could go buy Benedict Mathurin or whatever and expect him to pop off over the course of a couple of years and I can still play him now. I think that makes a little more sense than I don't think the opportunity cost of owning these guys before they pop is that high. Like, if you flip them, fine, that's great. It's an investment like any other investment, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like a really smart way to use resources, at least until you're fully maxed. Like, if you're playing a competitive lineup in every competition every single week, then by all means go ahead and do it. I just kind of think I would rather optimize, re-optimize, take profits where I can, just put the best teams out there that I can every week, grind rewards, and get there that way.
Yeah, I think the other issue with handcuffing is that you're never just plugging in the handcuff in. Like, if you have a champion lineup with Jokic and Giannis and 3 other really good guys, and Jokic goes down, you're not just like plugging DeAndre Jordan in there and like, I'm going to get Jokic's scores for that. Like in football, or at least for a goalie, like you do.
True.
Basically,
that's a great point.
And so now it was like, well, maybe I'll play contender now because I have an L10 of 14 instead of 65 or whatever the hell he is. But
I think Chris. Sorry. I think handcuffing Kawhi Leonard with Paul George, which is a terrible example at this moment in time, but like, I think if you're handcuffing Chris Paul, it's Devin Booker. I think if you're handcuffing Joel Embiid, it's with Harden out. I guess it's Matt. I mean, he's out too.
I forgot Harden exists anymore. He's been gone for like a month, and that's like 10 years in Sorare time.
Do you know? So I found a tool that kind of just spits this out. With Harden and Embiid out, who do you think are the top 3 usage differential guys for the Sixers? Just those 2.
Tobias Harris, Tyrese Maxey, DeAndre Melton.
DeAnthony Melton is 1. Maxey is 2. Harris is 4.
Paul Reed.
So 3. Paul Reed. The problem is there's a little bit of minutes issues there because of being off the bench, but that's a really interesting one. Paul Reed, he got it.
No, it's George Niang.
Oh, George Niang, Iowa State legend.
Yes, that team was good. Yeah, that's weird. But like, even seeing that, so he gets a 4.7% usage differential with those guys off the court, and I don't think it makes it any more worth it.
Laird's about to buy a Harden. On track.
I'm staring.
I told you. I know that stare right when you hit news. I'm like, oh, he's totally wondering.
Can I see his rare price graph?
His rare is still expensive. By Anthony Davis.
Okay, so he wasn't really going for that much. I mean, I guess he's been out this whole time. I don't remember what he was at before he got hurt.
I mean, the problem is it was a different market too.
Right.
Not much has changed. He's about where I bought him before all the craziness happened. So I
I mean,
love.
he's
I'm gonna
literally
go here at the
like
end.
4 rares have sold since his last auction.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That's
nobody's gonna
wild.
sell him for a loss at this point because you know it'll go back up when he gets there. So here's a fun one for you guys in chat. Josh asked, I'm not answering this. I want you guys to. I want the reaction. Bought Anthony Davis for $52. Am I crazy to not move right now? He's going to get hurt, right? Yes.
absolutely, he's gonna get hurt.
So I think it's actually the bigger issue with Davis now is his L10 of 54.
It is
100%. Yeah, it's
No thanks.
with LeBron back now too. On top of it,
and he's already started dipping despite playing out of his mind recently.
Right.
Did you guys see the video
52
of
bucks.
him last week trying to help up LeBron?
Oh, and then
Somebody
he
saw
did like
that.
a split in like,
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
my god! And he got like hurt, but I think he ended up continuing. But he hit like the wets. He's literally, for those that didn't see it, you have to watch. But he's literally bending over to help LeBron. Just got fouled, and he's reaching over to help him. And only Anthony Davis would put his foot on the wet spot from LeBron's sweat. And his leg literally like hyperextends. Like you could see like a groin getting popped or something.
Yeah.
And he's somehow safe. So
It's shocking that he didn't like get hurt.
It's amazing. But Josh, to answer your question, that is Anthony Davis's life. And if you also the 2K video where he's playing as himself and he gets hurt on NBA 2K, like that's Anthony Davis. Like,
I mean, I think this page kind of does it pretty well. I just have this SO5 score, his scores with the projections. Like you can tell that his projections are now like 10 points lower because LeBron's back.
Right. And not to mention, he just went through an absolutely absurd run.
Right.
Like some guys just go on absurd runs, and they unfortunately are going to continue. And Josh, Zion or Fox, those both sound like great options to me. I mean, especially if they're cheaper than Davis.
I think now might be a good time to buy Davis.
Another buy low.
He's dipping.
In a tout. He should be back soon, I'm assuming. But Dame Lillard is a really good look too, if he's coming back.
I think very specifically, you should buy Anthony Davis number 357.
I don't know why anybody would
pump up their sale. But yeah, you can even see his auction prices going down 0.09.
Yeah,
I mean, but to your point, we talked about this a lot. It's because of it's actually less the fact that even LeBron's back and people are reacting to his L10 being so damn high. I mean, I can get Jokic for 10 L10 less than Anthony Davis right now.
Yeah, I mean, Jokic looks super cheap now for his scores.
Right.
But
Jokic, I think, is a great play right now. And he's got a few stinkers coming up in his L10s too that's going to keep it where it's down.
Yeah.
That's a lot of light green. I mean, look at those, like all of those last 4 are now over his L10 by like a good amount too.
Yeah, he probably, yeah. Once it breaks 50, I'm kind of like, ugh. Like Steph, I think, is at like 57 now, and I'm like, this is awful.
The good news with the Steph, though, is and even with Davis, right? There's only a few guys that we want to accept 50s over, and it's the guys that have shown 80s in the past. And it's like, okay. Like, to me, like Durant, though, like what I talked about, Durant was a really hard one, and I sold the Durant rare because he was well over 50s, and it's like, with Kyrie back, Durant just doesn't do massive games like that.
Anthony Davis now 4th, just as Alex predicted recently.
But Embiid's Embiid, I think, got a little bit cheap too. I love Embiid right now. His L10 sucks, but we know that he can drop 100, especially with no Harden, no Maxey. That's just very, very live. John Morant 47 looks fantastic. Pascal Siakam is still cheap. Yeah.
Looking at
it's not over yet.
The rare values is so interesting. Because, like, realistically, who would you rather have if on a limited budget, which I know is hard to just imagine and put yourself in that position, but Luka at 1.1 or, I mean, even Giannis at 0.8. I think the answer there is still Luka, but like,
no, the answer is Steph at 0.615.
I mean, it's like
Half the
Steph
price.
and Embiid.
Exactly.
Right. I can have both.
And yeah, if you have only enough money to buy a Luka, like that's that's
I mean the
interesting.
I mean the long term though, the answer probably still is Luka. Just know that it's in your gallery and know that he. Just the problem with Luka is he's always just a champion play.
Yeah.
Because that Elton's never going to suppress ever again.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
So
he's just got to get hurt in 10 straight games. He's got to try and play and be like, I can't get through it. Let me try again tomorrow. Oh, I got 2 points. I got to come out.
Right. That's the only way his Elton ever gets like in the low 50s.
Right.
So ridiculous.
Right. Yeah. Comparing the prices always like I'll always be like, oh, Halliburton's really cheap. But I think his L10 is going to pop soon also. He's going to break 50.
Both Booker and Durant, based on that chart, look really cheap. And Siakam. Siakam definitely looks cheap too.
You know who really is the cheap one?
Who's that? LeBron
James.
Yeah. I mean, LeBron's going for records right now. So
I can't
I think
believe
he can do work. And when AD gets hurt, if you want to talk about the handcuff, right?
Yeah.
When AD gets hurt, LeBron's usage is going to go up. And no, before anybody asks about Russ Westbrook, the minutes don't go anywhere for us. It's like mid-20s until they trade him.
I'm just looking for guys in this range who are underperforming their L40.
Oh, Mike Baston, Bot Cat, before lock.
Oh,
that hurts, man. I'm sorry.
Oh, that sucks.
That very much sucks. So there's no worst part about it. Porzingis stands out on that chart right there. So does my boy Bane.
Porzingis is another injury waiting to happen.
But Porzingis, like we saw last night, his upside is like insatiable too. It's 69.3. That's a black type of buy right there.
He was also, I feel like he was at like 50 within like 15 minutes too. Like I thought he was on pace for 100 at some point.
And it's just hysterical. So that was actually a funny one on matchups too. Is like I was actually mad because we used to always love in DFS. We would love a center that can extend that like is on for Rudy Gobert because Rudy Gobert doesn't want to leave the paint. So if you ever get like a 3-point shooting center, like even like a Miles Turner, actually does really, really well against Rudy Gobert because he will extend and Rudy just wants to get the stats, the boards, and the blocks. So kind of makes sense.
It does. It does. Yeah. Well, we're completely off topic with the values now as we're touting Anthony Davis and Luka Doncic. So
you want touting cells on it.
I got one last one for you.
Go for it.
You want to know who has the highest usage differential with Karl Anthony Towns off the floor for Minnesota?
Austin Rivers.
It is Austin Rivers.
Oh God!
This next game, baby, that's the one.
Now it's time to end.
He's gonna pop.
Thank you to everybody who has joined us live. If you could please hit the like button on the video. If you have not subscribed to the SorareData NBA channel, if you could please do that. That's always really helpful and appreciated. If you're listening to the audio version, you're probably already subscribed, but if you could rate and review, also quite helpful. I can't believe we began and ended with Austin Rivers. That's really, surely he's going to drop 30 and then we can get out of this card. The last thing I need is to keep it. But anyway, thank you to everybody.
Go USA.
What's that?
Go USA.
That's right. Let's go USA. We've got 2 hours until kickoff. So hopefully next week we'll be celebrating that USA victory as well. So thank you to everybody for joining us and good luck